Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? Please let me know in the comments where you guys are tuning in from. I see we've got just over 300-400 people in the chat. Actually, comments are not working. I'm gonna have to refresh it. Give me a second. There we go. Now I can see all of you. There we go. We've got people tuning in from Hungary, from Pakistan, from California, from North Carolina, South Florida, Canada, Jamaica, Belarus, Lithuania, Russia, New York City, Wales, Virginia Beach, Kansas, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Florida, Scotland, Australia, Netherlands. Now it's going too fast. I cannot keep up. So there we go. Someone says, Vive Niger, à la France. We'll get to that shortly. So, give me just a second. Give me a second. Actually, I thought before we get into Niger and I wanted to share something with you. Hold on. You're gonna like this. Okay. This is funny. This is really funny. So, thank you to everybody who came out to the No to NATO event in London. It was really great meeting with all of you. And funnily enough, after the protest opposite Downing Street, I saw as I was leaving, there was a Ukrainian protest. And what do you think? What do you think someone brought to this protest? I'll give you a hint. Well, it's more than a hint. I filmed a video so you can look at this mockery. Do you see it yet? There we go. Just some casual Nazi symbolism, right? The funny thing is that it's not even just here. I took some photos. It's not that it's like an Azov logo, and inside the Azov logo you have, you know, two Nazi symbols. You have this black sun, and then on top of it, the wolf's hook. No. It's just a wolf's hook by itself. It's just a Nazi symbol, right? Just take it or leave it. And I mean, to make things even more disgusting, to make matters worse, this is so. If you're walking down, you know, Whitehall, you have a whole bunch of monuments, right? You have the cenotaph and so on, and right here opposite this flag, you can't see it in the shot, but right across, like literally on the, you know, across a few meters away, you have a monument that is dedicated to the women of World War II. Okay, so the 6-7 million women who played a part in you know, in helping fight the Nazis during World War II. So you have a monument for women in World War II who fought Nazis, and then a few meters up across you have someone with a Nazi flag, you know, just hoisting that in the middle of London like it's nothing. I'm pretty sure if you went and you know, pulled out this flag in Germany and Austria, you would be fined and or thrown in prison. Because it's very clear what it is. It's a Nazi symbol, period. You know, whether you bring it to Ukraine protests or you bring it to the moon makes no difference. It's a Nazi symbol. It's very clear what it means. And actually, the fact that it's at a Ukraine protest makes it very, very clear what it is, because we all know that a lot of the fighters that were incorporated into the Ukrainian army, they have Nazi iconography and symbols on their patches, on their logos, on their flags, and they don't even hide it. They don't even hide the fact that you know, they're Banderites. They continue this Nazi philosophy and ideology. So it's not even neo-Nazism. It's just Nazism. But yeah, you know, this is kind of what the NATO hysteria has done, and on top of that, everywhere you go, you're gonna have Ukraine flags on top of government buildings. Okay, no, it's not even just government buildings. Like even castles, like old shit from the Middle Ages that has literally nothing, zero, nothing to do with Ukraine and Russia. Just put a Ukraine flag on top of it. You know, fuck it. Anyway, let's talk about the State Department and some of their other endeavors. Give me a second to pull this up. Thank you, Crazy Puppet, for the super chat. Crazy Puppet says, great to see you, Richard and Angel Claudia. Any news on acquiring crabs for Z-Dance? I don't know if we're calling it that yet, but I defer that question to Claudia, as she is the one who's been tasked with coming up with a successor to the crab dance. But I see we've got 600 people tuned in. Guys, please make sure you've pressed the thumbs up, the like button, because I only see 300 likes. So we need half of you to click the like button, please. Okay, give me a second here. Okay, so as I long suspected, the Americans had something to do with getting rid of Imran Khan in Pakistan. Okay, so you guys remember the day that the war in Ukraine started? So this is 24th of February, 2022. Where was Imran Khan? He was in Moscow. Okay, now it's a coincidence, because you know, you cannot just like get on a private jet and just show up. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it doesn't work like that. These visits are planned well in advance. Okay, but it doesn't matter, because you know, even by that time, it's not only that Pakistan refused to sanction Russia, but him, like, you know, the visuals of him being there physically, standing next to Putin. The Americans really, really didn't like that, and they punished him for it. So now we have proof that the Americans were behind it. And for a long time, Khan himself was saying he has a document, but he was blocked from releasing it, right? So the Americans had made a threat to Pakistan, not directly to Khan, but through one of his diplomats, okay? And this is exactly what Khan had said a year ago, and every single word that he said is true. All of it. So he tried publishing this document before, but what happened is they tried accusing him of violating the Official Secrets Act. You know, it's just like lawyer crap to stop him from publishing it. They said because he's the prime minister, he doesn't have the right to just randomly publish diplomatic documents. So the High Court in Islamabad, so in the capital, blocked him from publishing it. And somebody leaked the document to The Intercept, and they published it. And so what it is, it's a transcript, or not a transcript, but rather the meeting minutes, okay? They're the meeting minutes of the Pakistani ambassador to the United States, okay? Meeting with two officials from the State Department, all right? So these two officials are Donald Lu. So he's the Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, which sounds a bit weird, but you know, the Americans like to carve up the world into parts, and you know, both for the Pentagon and the State Department. So it makes running an empire easier. So anyway, It's Donald Lu, and the other one was Les Viguera. So he's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, and this is the document from the Pakistani ambassador's point of view. Okay, but he's still, he's still quoting them correctly and all these things, and it's so outrageous what the Americans are telling him. That they actually lodge a formal complaint. But let me just read this to you. So, at the outset, Don, meaning the same State Department official, right, who's the Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, he refers to Pakistan's position on the Ukraine crisis and says that people in the United States and Europe are quite concerned about why Pakistan is taking such an aggressively neutral position on Ukraine. That doesn't really make any sense. How can you be aggressively neutral? Anyway, what an American expression. So he says Pakistan is taking an aggressively neutral position on Ukraine, and then it does not seem such a neutral stand to the United States. This is exactly what I told you. I told you they are going to get rid of they are going to get rid of him for this. I told you. And actually, Imran Khan, he wasn't just, randomly meeting with Putin. He was buying 2 million tons of wheat, okay? And he signed a gas deal with the Russians. Now, funnily enough, the government that did the Americans' bidding and is now in power, they are still having to buy stuff from Russia because they cannot help it. But that's a different case. What happened is basically, as you'll see now, the Americans, they knew that in a few days you're going to have a vote, a very important vote in Pakistan, much like in other parliamentarian systems, which is a vote of no confidence, right? So if you want to get rid of the leader of the prime minister, you can launch a vote of no confidence, and in the case of Imran Khan, he lost by 4 votes, which is ridiculous. What happened is actually people defected to the opposition, just 4 people, right? And they got rid of him that way. So going back to this readout, to this very, very, very important document, what's happening here is that the Pakistani ambassador to the United States is trying to explain that, it's not that Imran Khan likes the Russians. It's just, they're mistaken about this. And he even tells them that this visit was planned well in advance. They know this. The Americans, this is the State Department, so it's not just like random American officials. They're diplomats themselves, right? They know exactly how it works. You plan visits months in advance, maybe even years in advance. Okay, it's a bit less likely, but nevertheless, it's not like Imran Khan chose this date of the invasion to go and visit Putin and show the world that he stands with him. No, that's ridiculous. But this is what they're implying, okay? So, going back to the document, yes? The Pakistani ambassador says that he asked Don Lu if the reason for a strong U.S. reaction was Pakistan's abstention in the voting in the United Nations General Assembly. So Don, the American official here, categorically replied in the negative and said that it was due to the Prime Minister's visit to Moscow. What did I tell you? I've been saying this crap for over a year. I told you exactly this stuff before we ever saw the document. The other thing, he's lying here, the State Department official. He says it's nothing to do with the vote at the General Assembly. That's not true. As you can see, optics matter very much. Okay? Optics mean a lot and carry weight in politics. That's why they don't like him being meeting with Putin in Moscow. Just like they don't take favorably to seeing Pakistan and other countries abstain from condemning Russia, right? So they're taking a neutral position. The Americans don't see it as neutral. They see it as adversarial, okay? It's, you're either with us or you're against us. Whether that's putting sanctions on Russia or, when it comes to voting against Russia in the UN, if you don't swing our way, then you are not with us. This is what they're telling him. And now we come to the coup. Don tells the Pakistani ambassador, quote, I think if the no confidence vote against the prime minister succeeds, all will be forgiven in Washington because the Russia visit is being looked at as a decision by the PM. Otherwise, I think it will be a tough going ahead. This is like the mob, okay? Now he's threatening the Pakistani ambassador and the Pakistani prime minister. This is a threat. He says next, I love the fact that it says he paused, right? Like in a movie, he paused and then said, quote, "I cannot tell how this will be seen by Europe, but I suspect their reaction will be similar." Meaning our friends are going to screw you too. Make no mistake about that. He then said that, quote, "Honestly, I think isolation of the prime minister will become very strong from Europe and the United States." This is the threat. You make sure that Imran Khan does not survive the vote of no confidence, that he is ousted, he's gone, bye-bye. Or else, both the United States and Europe are going to isolate you internationally, which could mean a million things. He doesn't have to go any further than that. It's quite clear that it's a threat. It's like the mob. I always tell you this. I'm going to tell you again. This is like the mob. Okay? Now the Pakistani ambassador is trying to explain to him that this visit to Moscow has been in the works for at least a few years, and was the result of a deliberative institutional process. And that when Imran Khan was flying to Moscow, the Russian invasion of Ukraine had not started, and there was still hope for a peaceful resolution. The Pakistani ambassador goes on to say that he pointed out that leaders of European countries were also traveling to Moscow around the same time. Yeah, but European leaders are under US control. Fully. Imran Khan is not. The State Department official even tells him, Dawn interjected that, quote, "Those visits were specifically for seeking resolution of the Ukraine standoff, while the Prime Minister visit was for bilateral economic reasons." So what? They act like it's something bad, you know? The American official here, Mr. Don Liu, acts like it's something bad to have bilateral economic relations with Russia. It's not bad, but for America, yes, it's bad. Because as you guys well know, the mantra after the war broke out is that you have to isolate Russia, put sanctions on Russia, right? Pakistan doesn't want that, still doesn't want that. Pakistan can't afford that. Pakistan is not doing well economically, putting it mildly. Okay? So the funny thing is that Imran Khan was, I mean, honestly, I feel bad for the guy for many reasons, but can you can you imagine being stuck there? You know, when there's a war breaking out. Yeah, of course he felt embarrassed and felt like crap, and he even said this, right? He said this in an interview afterwards. He said that, you know, it was an extremely embarrassing situation. I find this kind of funny that Putin had time in his schedule to do the meeting when there's a war breaking out. But anyway, you know. So he tries explaining, this is the Pakistani ambassador, he tries explaining to Dawn that Pakistan is worried how the Ukraine crisis will play out in the context of Afghanistan. Okay, and that Pakistan had paid a very high price due to the long-term impact of the conflict. And Pakistan's priority was to have peace and stability in Afghanistan, which was imperative, okay, therefore to have coordination with Russia and all the other major powers and keeping channels of communication open. This is correct. This is a smart approach, right? And so now the thing is that I published this big thread on Twitter, and I went through this, and what I underscored and outlined here was Pakistan's non-aligned foreign policy. So this is what is difficult to explain to someone like Dawn, is that they don't grasp this idea of being non-aligned. You know, when you talk about third world, for example, this expression, it somehow developed into a negative connotation. I don't know why, but what it originally meant was that, you know, countries that didn't wish to align themselves with the Western or the Soviet bloc chose a third bloc or a third world, right? And this was the birth of the non-alignment, you know, the non-aligned movement, and the fact that Imran Khan has you know, adopted that is very smart, because he has no other choice, right? Pakistan has such an important position, not just politically but geographically. You know, just in the vicinity and on its borders. You know, it has Afghanistan, it has China. The Silk Road used to pass through here. There's India. So, you know, it's very smart to have a non-aligned and a neutral foreign policy. It's not something that started, you know, with the war in Ukraine. He had adopted this a long time before, but you can't reason with people like Don. Yes, so the Pakistani ambassador even tells him that Pakistan's position is that countries should not be made to choose sides in a complex situation like the Ukraine crisis. And he stressed to Don the need for having bilateral communications at the political leadership level. And then Don says, "You have conveyed your position clearly, and I will take it back to my leadership." That means you screwed up, and I'm going to tell my boss. That's what it means. Here's another very important quote. Don tells him that I would argue Imran Khan's visit has already created a dent in the relationship from our perspective. Let us wait for a few days to see whether the political situation changes, which would mean that we would not have a big disagreement about this issue and the dent would go away very quickly. Otherwise, we will have to confront this issue head on and decide how to manage it. So once again, he tells him that if you get rid of Imran Khan, because he's giving him an off-ramp, so to speak, right? He's telling the Pakistani ambassador that we don't view it as Pakistan being the problem. We are willing to accept that it's just Imran Khan. Okay, so that Khan by himself, he was the one willing to forge, you know, additional ties with Russia. And yes, we are you know, very displeased about this. But if you make him go away, so does the dent in our relationship, and all will be forgiven. Right? That's the quote. All will be forgiven. It's a threat. These are multiple threats. And lo and behold, what happens a few days later? Imran Khan is gone. Goodbye. Imran Khan is the most popular politician in Pakistan right now, without a question. So, the most popular guy in the country, remember, before he entered politics, he was a cricket player, and a very successful one too. So he's got status and stardom from both his sports career and his political career. Loved. Not by everyone, but by most. And that's enough. It's more than enough. And somehow they still get rid of him. You got 4 people, a margin of 4 votes, a bunch of nobodies, a bunch of losers who just randomly decide to get rid of the most popular politician in Pakistan. The prime minister, not just any person, the prime minister. And I told you from the first minute, the Americans are behind this because they didn't like him taking a neutral stance. Did I not say this a million times? Lo and behold, the proof. This is why they didn't allow him to publish it. This is why it's taken over a year for somebody to leak this document for it to finally come out. This is disgusting, you know, it's really disgusting. And so the thing is that Pakistan, they have upcoming elections, okay? And Khan was saying to hold these elections sooner. I mean, now, as I said, it's been over a year since they got rid of him. So it's been a long wait, but But since the very minute that they got rid of him, he was saying, you guys need to hold a snap election so that you let the people decide and not just like 4 random, MPs. And they refused. And when he tried to dissolve parliament, they said, oh, he's abusing his power. And so, like, one by one, they start throwing all of these charges at him. They say he's a terrorist. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. Like, they actually tried charging him with terrorism. Did he blow a building up? What did he kill someone? No, he's a terrorist. So that's one. They tried charging him with corruption, right? They, as I said, they tried charging him with having violated the Official Secrets Act. They said that he was not just he was corrupt, but his wife as well. You know, you had all kinds of nasty shit rumors coming out about him. Both in Pakistan and in India, you know, oh, he's a drug addict, oh, he's this and that, you know, whatever, you name it, they said it. And then on top of that, the strategy you have to understand here is not just to like make him look bad. They know that elections are coming in Pakistan eventually. So one way to make sure that Imran Khan is not able to run is you get him convicted of terrorism or corruption, right? And then he's barred legally. He's barred from proposing himself as a candidate. Okay, and that's exactly what they've done. Right? They've put him in prison twice. Right now, he's in prison again. It's the second time. They tried assassinating him as well, which would, you know, it's like the list is so long. I just. Oh yeah. By the way, they tried killing him. Yeah, and it's not just him, but his party, PTI, right? They've put thousands of people from his party in prison unfairly. And so you've had a transition from Pakistan being a democratic country to Pakistan being a country that is more and more authoritarian, has less civil liberties, is less democratic, and the role of the military is even stronger than it was before. And you know, if you know Pakistan and you understand Pakistan, you know that the military has always been very strong. You must have the military support to run an effective government. And they will leave you alone, and it will be democratic. And Imran Khan was skillful enough to balance those things. But the reason he was ousted is very clear. He didn't play ball with the Americans, and they got rid of him. The Americans were so offensive in this meeting that I just read out to you that afterwards the Pakistanis did what's called a démarche, right? Which is basically a word for a formal protest, right? A diplomatic protest or a dress down. Okay, so what they did is the Pakistani Foreign Ministry lodged a formal complaint with the American embassy, saying that this is outrageous behavior. You know, what are you doing trying to meddle in the internal affairs of Pakistan? Even if there's a vote of no confidence, what do you mean you're meeting with the Pakistani ambassador and telling him you want the prime minister to be removed? It's none of your business who the prime minister in Pakistan is. You're meddling in internal affairs at the highest level possible. And keep in mind, the Americans have always meddled in Pakistan because, you know, Pakistan for them is like, they want it to be, a wild west, or shall I say a wild east, right? It's right next to Afghanistan, as I said. And then with Al-Qaeda, you know, up in the border area, if we're talking about the Khyber Pass and Peshawar, the Americans, the CIA, they exploited this and used this area to finance the Mujahideen, which then led to Al-Qaeda. And, and then when the so-called war on terror came, they killed so many people in Pakistan. That's one of the reasons Imran Khan was sick of the Americans, because they always pretend like Pakistan's a friend, you know, that they're partnered together against Al-Qaeda and against the Taliban. But actually what ends up happening is they just kill a bunch of people that are, and most of them being civilians that have nothing to do with terrorism. And there's, you know, an omnipresent American military, permanent American military in Pakistan, and they're abusing their relationship with Pakistan. It's a lot like what you see, of course, in Africa, right? So you have the French and the Americans pretending like, oh, yes, we're friends, right? So they say this to Niger and Burkina Faso and Chad and Mali, and pretend like they're partnered together against, jihadists. But actually what they're doing is they're just creating an excuse to put their bases there and stay there forever, right? So Imran Khan was very aware of this, and this is another one of the reasons they don't like him, because he wasn't anti-American, not in the least. Okay, remember he's British educated, right? So and a cricket player, and he even met the Queen once, and all these things. But he understood the value of his country, and he didn't want to be disrespected. He wanted sovereignty. Okay, and that's too much. You cannot have sovereignty. So now he pays the price for this. Now he pays the price. I think it's disgusting, all of this. I think it's very disgusting what they've done. It's a shame. Every Pakistani prime minister in history, not one of them has completed their term. For one reason or another, they either get, removed from office or assassinated. But for one reason or another, not one of them has been able to complete their term, which I think says a lot. And it's a shame, because Pakistan can be a very great country. I lived there when I was a boy for a few years, and it's a very, very nice country. And the guy's biggest crime is that he went to Russia to get wheat for his people, and signed a gas deal for his country. It's just a guy, he's just looking out for his country's interests. That's it. There's nothing more to it. He's not pro-Russia, he's not anti-Russia, he's not pro-America, he's not anti-America. He's pro-Pakistan, that's it. Just like he just wanted to look out for his country. And of course the Americans, they that doesn't sit well with them. And they put so Shahbaz Sharif, which the Sharif family is a political dynasty in Pakistan, they put him in his place, and someone who has not even one tenth of this man's popularity. It doesn't even come close. I mean, between the time that he was removed from office, I'm talking about Imran Khan, and now, where he's in jail now, he must have held, I don't know how many rallies, and I've shown you videos of these rallies. You have so many people coming out, whether he's in Islamabad or he's in Karachi or he's in Peshawar or he's in Lahore, wherever he goes, he gets these crowds that I don't think a single person in America or in Europe, not a single Western politician, could whip up crowds like that. Not one. And I mean that literally. I'm not exaggerating. This guy is so popular, and they're just trying their absolute best, their utmost, to make sure that he's not only removed from power at the behest of the Americans, but that he cannot return. So they play dirty. They play dirty with him. That's what's happening. We've got 1,000 people watching. Please make sure that you have pressed the like button. I only see 700 likes. Let's move on to Niger, and I'll fill you in on what's happening. I'm glad this one. When it comes to Imran Khan, this thread that I did, I'm glad it did so well, because I want people to see the truth, right? It's because it's frustrating when you see something so unfair like that, and the media, they're not going to talk about it. you know, BBC and Sky News and so on, they'll interview him, and the guy was like, I mean, it's so difficult to even summarize the story because a million things have happened, right? Like one moment he's under house arrest, the next he's not, the next he's in prison, the next he's out of prison, now he's back in prison, then someone tries to shoot him, you know, then his advisors are imprisoned, his protesters are imprisoned, some of them are brutalized, yeah. But they'll interview him, and you know, you get the sense that the situation is bad and it's dire, but they won't touch on the catalyst, like who sanctioned this, who started this, who is behind the fact that he is in this situation. It's not like, oh my God, he was so unpopular and so incompetent that he was removed from power and you know, like some mad king because he just wasn't fit for the job. No, the United States engineered a coup because they didn't like his neutral stance on Ukraine. Period. That's it. Don't complicate it. There's no need to, you know, overcomplicate it. That's it. Let me show you this clip. This is from 2012. Julian Assange interviewing Imran Khan and talking to him about what I just mentioned with how the Americans are exploiting Pakistan, using and abusing his country as a giant base for their so-called war on terror.
But let's move on to the US. Tell me about this assassination of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. What was the feeling in Pakistan? That the ISI was hiding Osama bin Laden, that they are incompetent? Why was Osama bin Laden in Pakistan?
Julian, what you must understand is that Osama bin Laden was trained by the ISI and CIA.
This is why I love this man. Straight to the point.
All Al-Qaeda were trained by the CIA and ISI about 20 years back. So these people were assets of the Pakistan Army. They were trained by the Pakistan Army and the ISI, financed by the CIA, but they were fighting the Soviets. And for a long time, these groups had very close association with the Pakistan secret agencies.
But let's move on to...
Do you understand now why both of these men are in prison? When you speak too much truth, that's where they put you. I don't think that's a coincidence that these men are both in prison now. Anna in the comments says, we make our own bogeyman. Yes. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And this is the exact same situation that you have going on now in the Sahel, in the Sahara Sahel, right? So let me talk about Niger now, okay? Give me a second. I have a couple of things ready for you. Oh, man. Oh, man. Okay. So let's talk about Niger, okay? I have a couple of updates for you, and I'll begin with ECOWAS and their threat to invade Niger. Okay, so ECOWAS is a regional bloc made up of 15 countries. It's called the Economic Community of West African States. And basically, Nigeria, okay, which is really just doing France's... and America's bidding here, has been pushing for this military intervention to basically send forces into Niger. And, you know, some of the countries in ECOWAS are for this, some are against. And, you know, they try to frame it like it's about restoring democracy in Niger. It's not about that. This is the you know, curated nonsense that you'll hear on Sky News or something. What they want is to restore Bazoum. They want to restore the old regime because he was very, very friendly and on good terms with the United States and with France. He is the one who allowed them to put their military bases in Niger. He is the one who has turned a blind eye to the theft of his own country's resources, notably the uranium that France has been siphoning off, stealing, plundering for decades, and so desperately needs. So the French are in a very awkward position because they don't want you to understand, they don't want the world to understand that, yes, they are still a colonial power in Niger and in West Africa. They can't show their hand. So instead of the French saying, well, you know what, we're going to come in and get Bazoum out and put him back in power, what they're doing is they're moving through ECOWAS. Okay, so they make it look like, oh, look, it's the Africans who, they by themselves, they of their own accord have acted with benevolence to restore the rule of democracy, right? That's what they want it to look like, because the optics have changed today. Yes, colonialism is still present, but they don't have. They can't act with the same boldness that they used to, even though, as I said, the bases are there. The theft is still ongoing. All right. So now ECOWAS is split. They came to a decision after the deadline passed. The deadline was August 6th, right? So they basically told Niger, they told the junta, the military junta in Niger, you either restore Bazoum or we're coming in. And then the clock is ticking. It's midnight. Bazoum is not back in power. He's still, under house arrest. The junta did absolutely nothing because they don't easily bend to threats. And ECOWAS did nothing because they can do nothing. Like I said, they are split internally. Okay, so even despite passing this decision, it doesn't mean anything. On top of that, they were supposed to have a meeting in the last 24 hours. Also didn't take place, but they're saying, oh, there were some technical errors or something. And the other thing you have to consider is that Niger's military, they are very, very seasoned fighters. Remember, up until this point, up until the 26th of July, the United States and France, they put their bases. They put them in multiple African countries, and the French were kicked out, right, of Mali and Burkina Faso. But specifically in Niger, they considered Niger to be their strongest ally in the fight against jihadists, right? Jihadists, which, guess who created them? The United States and France. So this is a very confusing situation for them because they want to, they want to appeal to the troops that they have invested in, that they have helped train, right? Oh, you're our friends. And now they realize that actually they are not viewed as friends and they are not welcome in Niger. And I'll get to that in a second. It's very, very important about one of the generals leading this coup and his relationship to the Americans. Let me just show you the reaction from the people in Niger to the sanctions that ECOWAS have put on Niger, to the travel restrictions, the travel bans and freezing of assets, and by the way, Niger themselves have closed the border and closed the airspace in response to this threat of a military intervention. But let me show you the people of Niger what they have to say.
Là aujourd'hui pour vraiment exprimer notre mécontentement par rapport à la décision de la CEDEAO qui menace
In French, ECOWAS is CEDEAO.
Attaquer le Niger, nous on n'est pas d'accord. On n'est pas d'accord aujourd'hui, on ne sera pas d'accord demain. Nous on veut la paix parce que dans ce pays-là, nous on vit en symbiose. Tout le collectif de communautés de l'espace CEDEAO résidant au Niger vit très bien avec les autorités nigériennes. Et nous on soutient les nouvelles autorités. La patrie ou la mort, nous vaincrons.
Nous leur disons de privilégier les voies diplomatiques. Il faut privilégier les voies diplomatiques. Il y a toujours des solutions diplomatiques pour résoudre ce genre de problème parce que ce n'est pas la première fois que ça arrive en Afrique et dans la sous-région. Nous avons déjà des pays voisins qui ont connu cela et le père de la nation ivoirienne disait toujours « Asseyons-nous et discutons » car le dialogue c'est l'âme des forts, non la guerre.
Yeah, let me show you some more.
Une démonstration à l'ensemble des pays de la CEDEAO et de tous ceux qui sont en train de prendre des mesures impopulaires et inhumaines envers le Niger qui est en train de se libérer du joug de la colonisation.
Par devoir envers le peuple nigérien et conscient de la gravité du moment que vit notre pays.
So you very important note. You saw his name, Tiane. So he is now the de facto leader of Niger, okay? De facto leader.
Que vit notre pays, nous sommes toujours restés avec humilité à l'écoute de toutes les parties concernées et ouverts au dialogue pour qu'une fois l'émotion passée chez les uns et les autres, nous puissions ensemble créer les conditions d'une transition apaisée devant déboucher dans un délai relativement court et raisonnable à des élections générales, mais surtout une meilleure approche dans notre lutte contre le terrorisme et les autres maux économiques et sociaux qui minent le développement du Niger.
You know, I find funny is that you have not just the United States and France, but a lot of the countries doing their bidding in Europe and in Africa alike, who are threatening Niger with cutting off aid. Now, the thing is that Niger is already one of the poorest countries in the world. Go figure, right? Because they've been plundering it, just like they've been plundering the rest of Africa and Arabia for centuries. So what difference does it make? This is what people don't understand. The attitude in Niger is that we are screwed either way with you guys. So we're going to go our own way and do things our own way. We've seen what, your friendship means and how much your humanitarian assistance means and your military aid. We've seen what these things are. The jihadists are still here. They are here in the first place because you did that. You destabilized Iraq. You destabilized Libya. You created and allowed these groups to thrive in the first place. And then you propose the solution. So you make money by arming us, right? Every pair of boots, every helmet, every bullet. Someone is making money off of those things. And those corporations are in France. They're in Britain. They're in the United States. Not in Niger. And then they put the bases there and they never leave because the problem is never fixed. So that's the attitude. That is the attitude. They don't care. They don't want your military aid and they don't want your humanitarian assistance. They don't want anything to do with you. Niger has now cut off and suspended 5 defense accords with France. and the French response to that, they're not happy with it. They say that, well, you cannot do that because the legitimate leader and president of Niger, Bazoum, did not cancel them. And since he's the one who signed them, goodbye, man, bye. Bazoum is not coming out. He's not going to unsign and cancel anything. These guys are in charge and they've canceled it. Goodbye. So the French now are made to look like fools. They have been made to look like fools, right? And it's just a question of time before that base is gone. Look, it happened next door. It happened, as I said, in Burkina Faso and in Mali. Look at the map I showed you in the beginning. This is just since 2020. So in the last 3 years, look how many coups you've had in this precise exact region. Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. There's a reason for this, because they're fed up. They're fed up of neocolonialism. They're fed up of this money, this CFA franc, which is a currency that is minted in France. That's not independence. That's neocolonialism. In every form, economic, military, cultural, even French. You heard the videos. People speak French because it was forced upon them, just like it was forced upon countries in the Middle East and other countries in Africa. Right? This is a legacy of colonialism. It doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with speaking many languages, but there's a difference when it was forced upon you. Yes?
L'ensemble des Nigériens, l'ensemble des citoyens apportent leur soutien à la CNSP, c'est-à-dire la gente au pouvoir. Donc ils ont notre soutien, alhamdulillah.
There's a typo down here. I think someone meant to write Nigerians, not Nigerians, right? So it says A, but it's supposed to be E, right? Again, I I shouldn't have to say this, as I'm sure most of you know, but Nigeria and Niger are two completely different countries. Yes.
Apporte leur soutien à la CNSP, c'est-à-dire la gente au pouvoir. Donc, ils ont notre soutien, alhamdulillah. Et nous sommes contre les sanctions prises par la CEDEAO et l'UEMOA. Nous sommes contre ces sanctions.
J'ai un message au peuple, plus précisément au président du CNSP.
When they talk about the CNSP, that is the formal name of the junta or the coup leaders. Okay. Again, I remember playing the speech to you, the announcement on the 26th. Straight to the point.
Nous voulons qu'il fasse une audit. Les gens qui ont pris l'argent de l'État, ils sont là. Ils sont dans ce pays-là. Ouais. Et il ne faudrait pas qu'ils nous déçoivent. Ouais. Le peuple est sorti, il y a une masse.
Yeah, see what it says there? It says, "Abat la France, vive le CNSP." So they're saying down with France and long live the CNSP, which, as I said, are the new government, right?
Qui ne s'est jamais produit depuis 1960. Il ne faut pas qu'il déçoive le peuple.
So he's saying people that have stolen the money of this country, the corrupt ones, they're still here, right? And we don't want the new, the military leadership, the coup leaders, to let us down. That's what he's saying. You notice the Russia flags everywhere? Look at the size of this protest. 30,000 people. This is just one protest. It's just one. You got these happening every single day in Niamey and elsewhere. Right? Niamey is the capital. 30,000 people. Look at this.
L'objectif de la mobilisation.
The aim of the demonstration is to show the whole world and the international community that we are 100% behind the agent who has taken power, which is the CNSP. They have their support. They have the support of the population. We went out to lend a hand, so that's the contribution we can make.
I mean, to say that this putsch doesn't have legitimacy is, would be ridiculous. This is very, very clearly supported by the people, because since 1960, so that's when Niger officially became quote unquote independent, which we know is not true because they've been under France's control ever since, and before. People know what that brought. It brought them absolutely nothing. And the Russia flags are kind of funny because it shows you that the coup is a rejection of France, and the Russia flags are a rejection in general of the West and the direction that the West is taking Niger in. Again, if you look at any index, right? So Human Development Index, whatever you like, Niger is usually going to be at the bottom or the second, last country. So even in a quantifiable sense, in a statistical sense, you can prove with the numbers, you can show exactly what following France and the US has brought Niger. Fuck all. That's what it's brought Niger. Nothing. Here, some more videos, and I want to show you these because it's important you see the people there themselves, what they actually say.
Mais tout sauf la France. Nous ne voulons plus de la France. La France doit... Et si même la France a honte, moi à la place de la France, wallah, je ne vais même pas parler du Niger. Vraiment, ils ont honte. Macron a honte. Et Billahi l'a dit. Wallah, je vous dis, je vous assure, s'il plaît à Dieu, que ce soit Tinubu, que ce soit Macron, que ce soit les États-Unis, tous ceux qui ont une main invisible derrière les pays africains, plus particulièrement le Niger.
Je me présente au nom de Issa Bahari, étudiant et citoyen lambda. Chers frères et sœurs, amis de lutte, l'éminent peuple nigérien, Recevez mes sincères salutations amicales et patriotiques.
Je suis Hamza Touyaye, j'ai été journaliste pendant 15 ans à l'ORTN. À cause de mes opinions politiques, j'ai dû quitter la télévision nationale. Maintenant, ce matin, je suis venu marcher avec l'ensemble du peuple nigérien. C'est une marche républicaine pour dire non à la petite France, non au petit Macron, qu'on ne veut plus des troupes françaises chez nous.
Yeah, I'm not surprised they fired her, right? Because you see what a hold the France has, a cultural and political hold on the country, right? This is also known as la France-Afrique, right? It's like it's a mesh of the word of France and Africa, France-Afrique. So it is the idea, the very essence of neocolonialism, because the French really, you know, they just wouldn't let go of their African colonies. So what De Gaulle and the French government to this day have done is pursue a politic of France-Afrique. It's this you know, mirage, this complete charade of that. It's a partnership between France and Africa, you know, and France will encourage whatever development their former colonies want, but without, you know, overstepping boundaries and making sure what it's really about is maintaining French influence in Africa, period. That's it. That's all you need to know, period. It is about keeping control of former, quote-unquote, former French colonies. That's what it is. Niger is a prime example of that. And that is why this coup is so important, because it's a rejection of that. Yes? So now I begin with my favorite part. I was just warming up. The queen bitch, Victoria Nuland, neocon of neocons, decided to come to Niger. I wonder why. So she went to Niger to try and speak with the coup leaders. They wouldn't even meet with her. They wouldn't even meet with her. I mean, it's the best response. The best response. So let me show you this. All right. So there are two good pieces here. I'm reading to you from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Okay. So Victoria Nuland, she went to Niger despite the airspace being closed, which is weird, right? Obviously, the CIA or the State Department have some flight. They flew her in. The French are also violating Niger's airspace by continuing to run planes in, right? But again, they're just friends, right? They're not here to you know, step on anyone's toes. So basically, she went to meet with Tiani, and he said no, and she had to sit down with 3 colonels and a general. Okay, so they told Victoria Nuland, you are not allowed to meet with Bazoum, who's the deposed president, and you are not allowed to meet with Tiani, who's the head of the army and now the de facto leader of the country, right? they wouldn't even give her 1 minute of their time. Now, she did sit down with this man. Now, he is a general, okay, who has been essentially groomed by the United States. You know, they've been working on this guy for a couple of decades, right? So he's Brigadier General Moussa Barmou, right? And the Wall Street Journal describes him as long courted by Washington as a partner against Islamist extremism. So they thought that because he heads the special forces in Niger, and that, you know, his troops have worked alongside the American troops for so long. Yes, and they've cooperated together, and that, you know, he went to the he went to the United States to study there, even that they could influence him into reversing the coup, and he basically just told them to piss off. So she Victoria Nuland had to sit down with him. She had to sit down with a brigadier general, the head of Niger's special forces, that the United States themselves had been grooming and curating for years now, for decades actually, for 30 years, only to be told, no, goodbye, we do not accept any of your demands and we do not care for any of your threats. Nothing. She left without a single breakthrough. So as the Wall Street Journal say, that Barmou is the guy the U.S. military courted for almost 30 years. He's a guy the U.S. sent to Washington, D.C.'s prestigious National Defense University. He has invited American officers to his home for dinner. And he's in charge of the elite special forces, crucial to stemming the flood of Al-Qaeda and Islamic State fighters across Western Africa. In the 2 weeks since Niger's coup, Barmou has emerged as the main diplomatic channel between the US and the junta. American officers and diplomats have his number in their cell phones and think he is their best chance of restoring democracy. Whenever you see the word, or the expression rather, of restoring democracy, what they mean is restoring American and French rule in Niger. Okay? Barmou sat down in Niamey, Niger's capital, for 2 hours on Monday with Victoria Nuland, the acting U.S. Deputy Secretary of State. Oh, my lady has been promoted, I see. She's been promoted. The queen bitch. Just to give you, as a quick side note, just to give you her rap sheet. This is from Code Pink. They did an excellent rundown. So, Victoria Nuland, as I just read to you, is now the number 2 in the entire State Department. So under Blinken, you will now have Victoria Nuland. Number 2. I mean, I've never seen someone fail upwards so well, right? She does better than most journalists in Britain and America, right? They lie and lie and they get promoted and promoted. Lie some more, get promoted some more. And in Victoria Nuland's case, you bully and you kill some more and you get promoted more, right? So the entire problem in Ukraine right now, half of the problem in Ukraine is her doing, right? Not to give her too much credit, but you could say half. Easily. There's this famous phone call that she had that was leaked, where she's on the phone and she's talking about Ukraine, right? Because you remember when the Americans did this coup in 2014 in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian president had to flee to Russia, you had, by coincidence, a flood of American officials just out in the open running about Kiev, right? You had McCain, who's another neocon, and who also found himself with jihadists in Syria. What a coincidence. And Victoria Nuland, right? So she was there working, I would say behind the scenes, but she wasn't really behind the scenes. She was on stage. She was center stage doing this in front of everybody. And there's that phone call where she's like, fuck the EU, right? Which really embodies how much, the Americans value their so-called relationship and partnership with Europe. There is no partnership. Europe is a vassal, right? It's a vassal continent to the Americans, right? As I said, even during my speech last week in London, the American strategy is that you keep Europe weak, you keep Europe under America's heel, and then use Europe to attack the Russians with. But just to quickly give you, as a side note, okay, her rap sheet. So Nuland was Dick Cheney's deputy national security advisor from 2003 to 2005 during the illegal U.S. invasion and occupation of Iraq. In 2005, she became ambassador to NATO, where she lobbied Europe to participate in the occupation of Afghanistan. In 2013, Nuland was nominated to act as Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, where she was supposed to employ diplomacy and relations with Russia, Ukraine, and former Soviet states. But instead, Nuland and the White House partnered with the Ukrainian far right. Like those people that I saw waving Nazi flags in London opposite the memorial for the women of World War II. Yeah, that far right in Ukraine. Funneling $5 billion at Ukraine to overthrow its democratically elected president and engineer a transition government to privatize Ukraine and prepare for war with Russia. Nuland passed out pastries during the Maidan coup before Viktor Yanukovych fled under a hail of bullets. Nuland was caught in the scandal involving the leaked phone call. Right, so this is exactly what I was talking to you about, where she says, F the EU. Victoria Nuland is a dangerous war hawk, not a diplomat. She should be tried at The Hague, not elevated to run the State Department. What a brilliant ending. It's like as if I'd written it myself. I love it. No, but seriously, this is who they sent to Niger. You know, out of all the people in the United States, 320 million people in the United States, most of them good people. Who do they send to calm the situation in Niger? This bitch. Wow. I mean, I would seriously be offended and take that as a sign of aggression. I really mean that. I'm not saying that like, you know, figuratively. When you send Victoria Nuland, you are sending a bully. You are committing an act of aggression when you send this person after what she's done, after what I just read to you, how many people she's killed, how many countries she's helped destroy. Jesus. I mean, she's the devil himself or herself. I don't say that often. I don't say that ever. But she's like she's really the devil incarnate. That's who they sent. I wonder why she couldn't, you know, achieve a breakthrough. I wonder why. Anyway, so she had to sit down with a Nigerian general, right, that they had courted. And this is what happened, yes? So the talks proved frustrating. Nuland, knowing Bermu's long affinity for the United States, urged him to broker a deal that would allow Niger and its longtime Western allies to get back to fighting Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, and Boko Haram militants and stop the country from becoming another African outpost for Russia and its paramilitary Wagner group. Down here, you can see the drone base, which I've spoken to you guys about for a couple of years now. I mean, it's something that's cost $100 to $200 million. It's the largest drone base the Americans have in the world, and they put it in Niger, right? So it's basically a launching pad for attacking not just targets inside Niger, but anywhere they want. And of course, the Americans are not going to tell you, yeah, this is an imperialist outpost. No. They're going to tell you, we're your friends. We're only here to help you. We swear. We're just here to fight terrorists. You know, the bad guys. We're the good guys and they're the bad guys. Yes? Here's another base. Commando base over here and over here, right? So both to the southeast and to the west of Niger. And then you have a U.S. Special Operations Headquarters south of that. Also, these are near to the both of them near the border with Burkina Faso. You can see here they've highlighted the countries that support the coup in Niger in yellow and those who are against it in green. Remember, whenever you read a map, especially one that appears in the Western news, do you notice how they try to condition your brain? So Assad forces in Syria are always red, right? Red representing danger. The Russian forces, red, danger. And here, if you're against the coup, right? If you're against the Western puppet being removed, which you should be, then it's in green. Everybody should be against the coup, yes? We need our puppet back. Obviously, you shouldn't read too much into the colors, but it is something that you see in every goddamn map in Syria. Every goddamn map, without exception. So, the U.S. has spent some $500 million building up Niger's defense forces, including at least $110 million on the American-built drone base in the town of Agadez, and stations some 1,100 American troops in the country. In the wake of the military revolt, the U.S. has suspended its training of Nigerian forces and cut some other military assistance to Niger. Should the State Department formally declare the uprising a coup, American law would require further reductions in military aid. The United States has vowed to continue food and other humanitarian assistance to Niger. Yes, well, I don't know how that's going to get there since the airspace has been closed and the borders have also been shut, both by Niger and the neighboring countries. Especially ECOWAS and the neighboring countries in ECOWAS. Forget Mali and Burkina Faso because they're on Niger's side. But, you know, you're going to see a situation now, I guarantee you this, just like you saw in Venezuela, where they're going to say, why isn't Maduro letting any humanitarian assistance in? Same thing in Syria. Why isn't Bashar al-Assad letting any humanitarian assistance in? And in Niger, this will be all the more important because Niger, as I said, on the Human Development Index is number 2 or at the bottom of the list, right? So second last or at the bottom of the list. So they'll make a bigger stink out of it and say, look, this junta are not letting it the humanitarian, the benevolent, chivalrous aid that we, the Westerners, bestow upon our Nigerian subjects. They're not letting it in. They're irresponsible. They're unfit to run this country. Bring back Bazoum. We are concerned for Bazoum's health. Yeah, same song and dance. But they won't tell you that it's actually ECOWAS that have shut their borders, and that the French and Americans are perfectly capable of flying in planes when it comes to Victoria Newland, or freeing some terrorists that are now suddenly needed to stir chaos in the country, right? Those planes work absolutely fine, especially in violation of the closing of the airspace. But everything is the junta's fault. So Barmou, the brigadier general, is well aware the coup could cost him critical combat support. No more joint training, nor tactical advice from U.S. Green Berets. Green Berets are the special forces in the U.S., or one of the special forces. Or American drones sending real-time surveillance. This is what Barmou said to the Wall Street Journal. Pay attention to this quote. It's very short. He said that, quote, "If that is the price to pay for our sovereignty, then let it be." That's what Barmou wrote to the Wall Street Journal a few days after the coup, and he did not respond to any further questions for this article. I mean, from what I can see here, from what we can tell, it's no wonder Victoria Newland was unable to break him, because she's dealing with someone with principles. If every Arab and African leader were like this, you would have no neocolonialism. You would have none. Unfortunately, the president of Nigeria is allowing himself to do the bidding of the French and the Americans. That this is a fact. This is what he's doing. He is not serving his own country. He is not serving any of the countries in ECOWAS. He's not serving Niger or the people of Niger. He's not doing any good for Africa, nor the Sahara Sahel. And he knows very well that if he starts sending in troops into Niger, that the whole place is going to be destabilized. And as a matter of fact, even the Russians now have said that, and not just said, they have warned ECOWAS against doing anything. And the Russians, for the time being, they are basically saying neither for nor against the coup, but in favor of a diplomatic settlement, right? And warning ECOWAS not to take any military action because it will destabilize the entire region. That's true. That's true. So this is what is happening right now. You have Western countries that are using ECOWAS to do their bidding, to, as one of the people I showed you in the video mentioned, la main invisible, the invisible hand. This is how the levers of power work behind the scenes, right? And they do this often in other areas of the world, right? Just like you have in when it comes to Arab countries, you're going to have some Arab countries that are, being used to coerce, to bully, and to keep other Arab leaders in line, especially those who are becoming too independent and thinking too much for themselves, right? You saw, for example, recently Morocco. In Morocco, which is an amazing country, but unfortunately, the leadership, the king, in exchange for Israel recognizing Moroccan sovereignty and ownership of the Western Sahara, Morocco will now open an embassy in Israel, right? But things can change. Yep, things can change just as quickly as, they can be gone as quickly as they came. I think with Saudi Arabia, that was a good example of how quickly the tides changed. But, in this case, you cannot say that this is just the case of some a bunch of officers that decided to get rid of the president, right? You can see from the number of people that are coming out on the street that this is the sentiment of the country. And I guarantee you, not everyone is going to like what is happening in Niger. I bet you're going to have a good chunk of people who are against the coup. Just like in every country, you're going to have people who disagree and those who agree with something. But in this case, the majority of people support this move. Not because they necessarily favor Tiane or the junta, but because they know what the French have done, and this is a rejection of centuries of French colonialism. That's what this is about. This is what you need to understand. And like usual, in the press, they're just so blind to this. They just can't read the situation. So someone like Victoria Nuland, she thinks she could just come in and order them around and tell them what to do. They don't care. They do not care. And it's nothing to do with the Russians protecting them. The Pentagon themselves, Tony Blinken, the head of the State Department, he himself, they've all said that Russia has nothing to do with what's happening in Niger. Yes, Prigozhin is celebrating it, okay, head of Wagner, but just because there is real anti-colonial sentiment in Africa does not mean that it's not anything to do with Russia. Yeah, of course Russia is going to exploit that. It should exploit that. Why shouldn't it? The Russians didn't colonize Africa like France and Belgium and Britain did. They just didn't, right? So obviously they have higher moral ground when it comes to that by a mile. So even if the Russians use that sentiment for whatever purpose, right? It doesn't change the fact that people in Africa, people in Arabia, literally, truly, legitimately feel that way. They are really genuinely sick of France. They're genuinely sick of Britain. After what happened, it's their right to be. The French would do well to tuck their tail between their legs and just leave the same way they left Mali and Burkina Faso and just get this over with quickly, because that base is not going to stay there for long. Now, one last note I will add, and this is pure speculation. Okay, this next point. The junta in Niger did not annul their military cooperation with the Americans. Okay, I told you they canceled 5 agreements, defense agreements with the French, meaning we want you gone, but they didn't do that with the Americans. Now, even though Victoria Nuland didn't make any progress, right, according to her, and the State Department spokesperson, there could be, this is just I'm just speculation, but there could be an opening for the Americans to take the French place, and especially when it comes to the military base that the French have, and the exploitation and mining of uranium, gold, oil. Niger has everything, right? I think the reason people are coming out with Russia flags is because they like I said, it's a rejection of the West, and they would definitely prefer to have economic and military partnerships with the Russians over anybody else, because they know the difference between the West and Russia. But don't put it past the Americans, and don't put it past Victoria Nuland to screw the French, right? Just to give America, a better cut, right? And to get one up over the French. Remember, this happened already with AUKUS. Remember, Australia had a deal with the French to build diesel submarines. The French would sell them diesel submarines. And what happened? The UK and the US told Australia, we will give you nuclear-powered submarines. And the whole deal with France just went down the toilet, and the French were very upset. And even though all of these countries, in the case of France and the UK and US, are NATO and allies and members, doesn't matter. When it comes down to it, the Americans will put themselves first, definitely, before everybody and anyone, and they always do that. So there is a possibility, even if it's just a tiny possibility, that the Americans are waiting to see what happens and how the new leadership react to their cooperation with America. And having this general, this brigadier general that we just talked about, and his good ties with American officers and so on, that might be an avenue that they exploit. So they might be waiting for the French to get out, and then they will just usurp whatever resources and control the French had. You know, you have to understand that the anti-French and anti-colonial, it's really what it's about is anti-colonial. It's not about anti-French just for the sake of, you know, they don't like baguettes or something. No, this is people in Niger saying we are sick of being exploited. You should not underestimate the level of anti-colonial sentiment in Niger or any other country, right? They would rather, if it comes down to it, they will definitely choose the Americans over the French. But obviously their first choice would be the Russians. I'm just saying, don't underestimate the Americans. You saw this very recently when it came to AUKUS with the submarines, that the Americans screwed the French. They might as well just do it again now in Niger, right? Why not? If it puts them in a better position. And the Americans, another goal of theirs is not just to, you know, get the French out because they care so much about, you know, Niger's anti-colonial sentiment. No, they're going to do that so they put themselves in a better position and prevent Russia from coming onto the scene. Again, I'm just speculating here. This is just, you know, we're hypothesizing. I don't think it's necessarily, you know, likely, but it is a possibility, especially given recent events. It's just a possibility. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. You know, I think obviously what most people in Niger, and you heard what they were saying, what they want is both the Americans and the French to be gone, period. And it's so funny because the guy in the State Department, look at what he was saying about the Russian flags. I'll play you this clip.
After acting Deputy Secretary Newland's meetings yesterday, do you guys have any idea where things are going?
I will say that you're right. Acting Secretary Newland met yesterday with leaders of the junta and made clear that there was a diplomatic path forward for them if they would choose a return to constitutional order. She also made clear that there would be consequences if they didn't, that there are hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. assistance at stake. As she said last night in the call she had with the press, they were very difficult conversations. She didn't achieve any breakthroughs, and it's not at all clear that they will choose the diplomatic path forward. And I do want to emphasize that she also met with civil society leaders of NGOs while she was on the ground yesterday. She mentioned some of this. And in those meetings, she heard them express real concerns about the situation and express a desire for the country to return to a constitutional order. And I wanted to say something about that because I've gotten a lot of questions the last few days about so-called protests happening on the streets. And I think it's fair to note that not everyone that supports democracy in that country can take to the streets because of, you know, potential concerns about their safety. But she heard in their meetings that there is support in civil society for a return to constitutional order.
What a cope, man. He's acting like, yes, you know, literally tens of thousands of people are taking to the streets in support of the coup, but you know, somebody told Victoria Nuland in private that they're down with democracy. I promise. Believe me.
So we will continue to press for that, but I think we are very clear-eyed about the situation as it stands.
Specifically referring to protests where people were waving Russian flags?
I am.
Is that what you're talking about?
I am.
And do you think that that's a significant issue that needs to be addressed?
I think I have heard questions about these protests sometimes in this briefing room, and sometimes, you know, you see people assume that because you see people on the streets, it's an expression of actual support rather than people who might have been paid to show up at protests. It does seem odd to me that if your country is suffering an attempted military takeover, the idea that the first thing anyone would do is run to a store and buy a Russian flag, that strikes me as somewhat an unlikely scenario. But I wanted to emphasize that what we heard, what.
Sorry, but the way he puts it is kind of funny. Let me respond with this. I hear you, and I hear what you're saying. What I also find even less likely is that Russia has paid people and given them secret Russian flags to randomly whip out and hoist the moment a junta takes over in Niger. I find that even less likely. Okay, just get over it, man. Get over it. This is not the first time this happens. Okay, you know, you have to understand, it's a rejection of France and it's a rejection of the West, and you have U.S. bases in Niger, right? You have the United States going around not just Pakistan, as I showed you, you know, but equally in Africa, just like in Asia, trying to pressure African countries into submitting to their rule and condemning Russia, sanctioning Russia, voting against Russia at the United Nations General Assembly, etc., etc. And it's not working, and it's not going to work, because people have wisened up to that. It's not only that, they become more bold because they've realized they've got nothing to lose. The West have underdeveloped and stolen from these countries for so long, and then they give them like a few pennies. You know, it's like with Syria, right? Like the United States is stealing so much oil and then gives, you know, like $100 million in humanitarian aid. The oil that you stole is worth billions over, you know, a couple of years. What do you mean 100 million? That's nothing. That's chicken shit. Same thing with the African countries. The French take so much uranium and then throw a few pennies and act like they're doing them a favor. No, people are sick of that. They've wisened up to it, and they're done. You know, he keeps using the word democracy. I mean, people hate democracy when they understand what the West means by democracy. They don't actually mean democracy, right? It means control of your resources, military bases in your country. People are sick of that word. They're sick of hearing it. And another point I wanted to make is that what I read to you in the Wall Street Journal, let me go back to this quote here. You see here how they say, oh, look, the United States is giving you 500 million, 110 million. That wasn't Niger's defense forces. When America spends $110 million on a drone base, that's not building up Niger's defense forces. That's building up America's defense forces. Who wrote this sentence? Just look at this logic. It's like, you should thank us for putting a drone base in your country. We are building up your defenses. No, this is a U.S. drone base, and it's operated by the U.S. It's owned by the U.S., and it has U.S. personnel on it. It doesn't belong to Niger. Niger doesn't need the fucking base. You put it there because it's good for you. Again, this is the colonial mentality. It's like the railways in India, right? You have people to this day who are so ignorant and dumb who think that, well, you know, India should be grateful that we built them these railways. No, we built the railways in India so we could speed up the theft of their shit. Do you understand? The railways were built so British companies could steal stuff from India faster. They weren't built because we like, you know, donating railways to India. Yeah, what is this logic? It's the same thing here. Neo-colonial shit, right? Like, you should thank us. Thank us for putting thousands of foreign troops in your country to fight a threat that exists only because of our actions, right? Look, man, before invasion of Iraq in 2003, there was no such thing as Daesh or ISIS. This did not exist. Before the CIA was funding the Mujahideen, there was no such thing as Al-Qaeda. This exists as a direct consequence of the CIA's actions. These jihadist Islamist groups in both Iraq and Syria, and in the Sahara in Niger, and, you know, Burkina Faso and Mali, they exist as a direct consequence of NATO destroying Libya and destabilizing North Africa and the Middle East. Direct consequence. So it's like somebody giving you cancer and then selling you, you know, chemotherapy. It's the same thing, you know. That's a perfect analogy. what can I say? What can I say? You know, they're in for a big shock. They're in for a big shock. They're in for a big shock. It's over. Bye-bye. Say bye-bye to the colonies. Say bye-bye. Look, one after the other, they're falling. You know, this is what the history books should amend and correct. This is the real era of decolonization now, 2023, 2022, 2021, when you had these West African countries kicking out the French. That's decolonization. The next step is to get rid of the CFA franc, this colonial money, and you know, pursue other avenues and ways of you know, true independence. That's what it's about. I'm telling you, Niger is not going to be the last country where this happens, but I find it insane how, you know, here they say because there's a military takeover in Niger, the United States has to legally suspend the aid, right? This so-called assistance. There it is in the Wall Street Journal. They say in the wake of the military revolt, the U.S. suspended its training of Nigerian forces and cut some other military assistance. And should the State Department formally declare the uprising a coup, American law would require further reductions in military aid. Okay, well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Pakistan, which I was just talking about a few minutes ago, and I've been reporting on Pakistan for you know, over a year now with what's happening with Imran Khan. That was a coup engineered by the State Department, by the United States, right? They issued a threat to the Pakistani ambassador in Washington. They told him, if you get rid of Imran Khan, we will forget all about your neutral stance on Ukraine, which we don't consider neutral. We consider it adversarial. You know, I mean, it was genuinely neutral. Genuinely neutral. But for the Americans, you cannot be neutral. You have to be with them or they will kill you, get rid of you, depose you. Right? So they threatened them, and now that Imran Khan is gone, they've tried to assassinate him. They put him in prison multiple times. People in his party have been imprisoned. They've tried to bar him from running in the next elections because they know he is the most powerful, not powerful, but most popular politician in the country. And as a consequence, he wields great power and influence with the people, you know, which is the very essence of democracy, that the people want this man. They still got rid of him. And now Pakistan, look at the situation. The military, which has always played a very strong role, the military are now even, you know, stronger than they were before, to the point that Pakistan is no longer a democracy. You know, the civil rights and civil liberties have eroded. They've trampled on people's rights because people, they love Imran Khan so much. You had massive rallies, massive, you know, outpouring of support, that they had to basically contain the civil unrest, because they just could not accept the situation that their prime minister has been removed, and you know, they're tainting him and trying to bar him from running for office. So as a consequence, both Imran Khan and his supporters are in prison. And you have less civil rights. The institution, right? The democratic institution in Pakistan, when it comes to having, you know, real elections of deciding, the people deciding who their leader is, all of this is gone. Do you think the United States has suspended military aid to Pakistan? No, because the whole point was to keep Pakistan as a giant military base, right? So do you see the irony here? When it comes to Niger, because you got rid of our puppet, the one who lets us put military bases and steal your resources, sorry, that's a military takeover, right? And even though most people support this coup because they hate colonialism, and by its very essence, it is democratic, because it is what the people want in Niger. They want a free country, an independent country without U.S. and French influence. No. That's a military coup. Now we have to put sanctions on you. Now we have to cut assistance. We have to cut aid. But in Pakistan, where this guy was democratically elected, and now we make sure that he's gone, and now the country has become more militaristic and it's more authoritarian, oh, the aid keeps flowing because our guy is now in power. Do you see the double standard here? It's disgusting. And you know, Victoria Nuland, although she's not mentioned in this meeting, right, between the State Department, between Don Lu and the Pakistani ambassador. She's not there, but we all know that, you know, from the rap sheet, she's been in every administration since George Bush. Every single administration, she somehow manages to fail upwards and find her place, and now she has become the number 2 person in the State Department, which is again the Foreign Ministry, you know, the American Foreign Ministry. So by these actions, I mean, and her involvement, I find it so difficult to think that, you know, she had no role in Pakistan. I find that very difficult. It's just that we haven't seen a trace of it. But I find it very difficult to believe that, you know, she was involved in Ukraine and Niger, but not Pakistan. No, she's definitely involved. She is always involved. She is the devil incarnate, this woman, right? She's definitely involved. And even if she weren't, this doesn't change the point that the Americans are meddling in the internal affairs of other countries, not just with invasions, but through their so-called diplomats, who are really just bullies in suits, right? Diplomacy is like finding common interest, right? And you know, doing things with mutual respect. The whole point, the word to be diplomatic, what does that mean? You know, this phrase that we have in English, to be diplomatic, means to be, you know, to put things nicely. But they don't do that. They come and threaten, right? Victoria Nuland marches into Niger and makes threats. The Pakistani ambassador is threatened by the State Department and told to remove his prime minister and get rid of him. That's not diplomacy. These people are neoconservative war hawks. And the fact that every administration employs such people, you know, and tasks them with these huge responsibilities, shows you that no matter whether you're dealing with a Republican administration or a Democrat administration, you know, or a Democratic administration, you are always dealing with these characters, right? They don't change their behavior. There's a constant here. The neoconservatives are omnipresent, right? And this is why you have a coup in Niger, because people are sick of this stuff, precisely this stuff, right? Right, so I see we've got 1,600 people watching, which is splendid, and thank you for the super chats and the donations that you guys have given me. Give me a second just to load them up, because I don't know where the hell it went. Drifted somewhere up there. Again, it's good to see you, Crazy Puppet. Thank you so much for the donations. Crazy Puppet said, great. Oh yeah, I read that one. So some people want to hear your input on RFK spewing nonsense when Jimmy Dore asked him questions about Palestine on his show. I haven't seen that clip actually, but I have a pretty good idea what he's going to say, since I showed you that clip on here a month ago. Let me see if I can pull it up. I mean, RFK, just in general, you know, he is the most like fanatic, really fanatic in the true sense of the word, Zionist that you could possibly wish for in a candidate. Because obviously, the way things are now in Britain and America, when you're dealing with you know, a prime minister or president, you know that they're going to be Zionists, because Israel was created at the behest of Britain and the US, right? So it's been a long-standing policy. But he goes so far, you know, he goes above and beyond RFK. He is, I don't know what to call him. He's a true believer in the cause of Zionism, right? It's like he's bursting at the seams. he is so Zionist, he just cannot contain himself, right? He has to praise Israel with every breath. he sounds more Zionist than some actual Israelis, which is like mind-boggling, you know? Which is it shouldn't surprise you though, because he's running for president. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I really don't give a shit how well he understands NATO expansionism. You know, this is like he's no good. He's just no good. You cannot forego one issue just, you know, for the sake of the other. It just doesn't make sense. It's unacceptable. It is the entire point of this is that all of the money to keep Israel, all of the weapons to keep Israel going, come from America. So it's not just that he supports Zionism in spirit. It's, you know, with his very act, right? He will be giving them this money and okaying this money. It's not just him, obviously, it's all of Congress, but that's why it's important. You know, it's just as important as the NATO issue, if not more. It's been going on a lot longer, yeah. TY says, guess who built that stadium where 30,000 supporters in Niger gathered? A, France, B, the EU, C, the United States, or D, China? Well, I know on who I'll bet. I'll give the people in the chat a few seconds to guess, but I think it's D. So Crazy Puppet says, with Russia willingly forgave it debt so nonchalantly. By default, they devalued their currency relatively to forgiven debt. Is there a bigger play at hand? Good time for investment. Well, I mean, Russia, this is a concept that you don't even hear of when it comes to the IMF and the World Bank, you know, forgiving debt. The whole point is they want you debt trapped, right? You have to be in debt for them to screw your country. You know, this is, it's one part of the system that is really rotten and needs to be dismantled is this whole thing with the IMF and World Bank. I don't know if the Russians are going to do that with, you know, all the countries in Africa, but they've done it just recently. And just a note before I forget on Prigozhin, because Prigozhin, you know, Wagner are not officially in Niger, and there's nothing to suggest that they are unofficially, but he said that Nuland went to visit the leaders of the coup because she is scared, or the Americans in Washington are scared of Wagner coming in to replace them. So I definitely think there's some truth to that. You know, since July 26th, he's been supporting the coup and cheering it on. And, you know, I don't think, like, people mistake the motivations behind this. They think that he's doing it because he wants to see, you know, he wants to look at Niger as a business opportunity. They're like, oh, this coup is great because now they're going to contract me to send my soldiers in and I make money. No, the guy's stinking rich. How much more money does he need? The thing here is that, like, they just can't grasp in the media that people really, really dislike colonialism. That's it. There's no indication that Wagner are going to come into Niger. I wouldn't be surprised though. You know, after all, there is a threat if we're talking about these terrorist groups, right? But let's be clear, Wagner had to come in to clean up the mess that was created by France, by the UK, by NATO, by the United States in the first place. You know, just because the West created these bogeymen doesn't mean that the threat isn't real. It is real. That's the whole problem. And it's the same thing that you had in Syria. You know, you had Al-Qaeda and ISIS and NATO, right, pretending that they're dealing with this, right? In the end, it's Russia, Iran, Hezbollah that actually had to come in, and also Hashd al-Shaabi from Iraq, who really made a difference and dealt with it. But, you know, I think the analogy I offered a few moments ago about this business model where they'll, you know, plague some area of the world with a terrorist group that they created and then offer the solution. It's very similar to the analogy of, giving someone cancer just so you can sell them chemotherapy. It's the same thing. It's the same business model. It's never ending. I mean, how many years did the US stay in Afghanistan? 20 years to supposedly fight the Taliban. The Taliban's still there. The Taliban exists in the first place because of the US, because of their, they were financing the Mujahideen, and then it splintered off and broke into Al-Qaeda and Taliban and so on. Same thing in Iraq and Syria. The Americans are there also pretending to fight ISIS. ISIS is still there. Just yesterday, you had 20 soldiers in the Syrian army who were killed, and they constantly get ambushed on the road to Palmyra in the desert. So, who are the ones that actually dealt with ISIS? Who are the ones that actually had to fight against Al-Qaeda? The Syrian army, the Russian army, the Hezbollah, and the Iranians. They're the ones who actually pay the cost and have to clean up this mess. I forgot to mention Syrian army a few moments ago because it's so obvious because it's happening in Syria. But and of course the Hashd al-Shabi, the PMU, which were incorporated into the Iraqi armed forces afterwards in 2016, I believe. Ron, thank you for the super chat. Ron is saying, can you one day give an in-depth breakdown of how the Ottoman Empire collapse created the Palestine problem, i.e. French and UK drew borders and used Saudi Empire? RFK Jr. lies about it. What the hell does he know about this topic? I mean, I've spoken about this before, and I'd love to do another video, I suppose. But yes, I definitely will. Give me a second. Let me see if I can pull this clip up somewhere. I was thinking of Victoria Nuland a few moments ago. You know how you saw John McCain in Syria? He entered illegally through the north, through Turkey. There are some other examples of this kind of behavior, similar to Victoria Nuland. In Lebanon, you had the American ambassador in Lebanon who is meddling with Lebanon's internal affairs and basically trying to turn people against Hezbollah, but on top of that, basically doing everything that she's not supposed to do and getting out on the streets and marching with people. And the same thing the U.S. ambassador to Syria was doing in 2011, right? So, Syria ended up being in a lot worse situation. But yeah, you had Ford. I think his name was Ford. He was the American ambassador in Damascus, and yeah, he was just like out on the street protesting with people. I mean, it's very, very, very dangerous behavior. You can't you can't do that. Just imagine like if the Russian ambassador in Washington was out on the street protesting against the U.S. government. I mean, like they would cook up a huge stink because of that, and rightfully so. They would be right to do that. It's not his place to do that. Okay, give me a second to see if I can find this clip you guys are talking about. Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll look for it in my spare time, and put it together properly so we can go through it live together, because I'm unable to find it. Claudia's unable to find it, so let me get back to you guys on that. I mean, it's like, I don't know what else I'm gonna say differently, but if you guys are saying he's going back as far back as the Ottoman Empire and all this stuff, I mean, the thing is that the Ottomans, they were on Germany's side in World War I. And so the idea was that if the Arab Bureau, which was basically just like the Americans carve up the world now in CENTCOM and AFRICOM and so on, the British Empire did the same. So you had the Arab Bureau based in Egypt, in Cairo, that decided to get all the Arab tribes together and use them to fight the Ottomans from within, right? Because the Ottomans had taken everything from Damascus down to Medina, all the way into the south of the Arabian Peninsula. So the idea was that if you get rid of the Ottomans, then you can have your lands back, and Britain is not going to stand in the way, and so on. And this is a lie. This is a total lie, because what happened is that in secret you had the French, so France and the UK, two diplomats, Sykes and Picot, who met behind closed doors, and they carved up the Middle East, and it was like a cake. Like, I'll have this piece, you can have that piece, and we'll share this piece. And I mean it. They gave Palestine to Britain, and then Syria became French, and they carved Syria up into Lebanon, so that Lebanon could be like a Christian Syria or something, which makes, I mean, whatever. It's carving up the place based on sectarian lines. So the whole point from the get-go is that you make sure that you divide an area based on sectarianism, so that way people will fight each other even if you leave, right? Because it's divide and conquer. That's really it. And so and Britain also carved out Iraq and so on. And so when it comes to Palestine, as I said, it was a British mandate until 1948, and Balfour, who's the foreign secretary in 1917, he says that Palestine will be turned into a Jewish homeland in due time. And the idea here, what the UK is trying to do, which is actually anti-Semitic by nature, is that they were basically trying to get rid of Europe's and Britain's Jews by putting them in Palestine, right? So it's not because they have some deep desire, to care for Jews or an exodus. It's like, no. The whole point was we do not want you here, and so we're gonna get you out of Britain by giving you land that does not even belong to Britain, but is Palestine. So do you understand? At the same time, the British government was saying to the Arab tribes, we will give you your lands back if you kick the Ottomans out. They were also saying we're going to give this away to European Jews, right? And so what happened is that the occupation continued. In the case of France, the French they faced so much opposition in the 1930s to leave Syria and Lebanon because people were protesting. They were doing general strikes. The French government was forced to agree to leave. They said they would do it within 5 years, and then by that time World War II had broken out, so they never left. Right? And so basically from World War I right up until the end of World War II, and of course in the case of Algeria it goes on till the 60s, you've had decades of British and French occupation in the Middle East, and new borders that have been carved up, just like in Africa. Same thing, also new borders that just didn't exist. They're European borders imposed on other continents. So Israel, by definition, is a European creation, not just in the sense that Britain carved it out, but just ideologically, it's a European political ideology that comes from Austria, from Vienna. Okay, so from Herzl. So the idea of having an Israel, the creation of Israel, this is all European. Okay, and it doesn't even involve Jews that come from what is Palestine. It just involves European Jews being resettled into people's land. So this is really disgusting that they try to act like they care about Jews or something. I mean, look at Europe. Look at what Europe did. Look at the Spaniards. They kicked out Jews from Spain. In Britain, they were also kicked out. In Germany, 6 million of them were killed. That's how Europe treats Jews. That's their legacy. So now they suddenly want to turn around and act like they care about them so much. This is rubbish. It's complete rubbish. They do not care about Jews, and they just use that as an excuse to keep the Arab lands occupied and carved up, right? So Israel de facto is basically a Western outpost because it's funded by the West. It is equipped with Western weapons, and it makes sure that you never have united Arab land achieved, right? So whether that involves Syria and Egypt, or Iraq, Syria, Egypt, or Libya, it doesn't matter. Whatever version of pan-Arabism you have in mind, it won't be achieved because the whole point is to keep the Middle East fractured, and Israel is the best way to do this, right? Because it's the ultimate version of divide and conquer. Yeah. But in any case, I'll find the clip you guys are talking about, and we'll get to it next time. I find this funny with Victoria Nuland. She went all the way to Niger just to be, told she cannot meet with Bazoum. I think she had to phone him. She was able to phone him. And just so you guys know, he's basically under house arrest. He is, for a deposed president, he's treated quite well, I must say. He's allowed, visits by a doctor. He hasn't been Gaddafi'd, as one of you noted in my comment section. Gaddafi is treated way worse by NATO. Yeah. Way worse. And he didn't deserve that at all. I saw a meme on Twitter. Someone said, "Who said women don't like war?" And it's a picture of Victoria Nuland and Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. I don't know where it is, but yeah. Congratulations, I guess, to Miss Nuland on her promotion. From Queen Bitch to Assistant, Deputy Secretary of State. Well done. Crime pays. I don't know. Whoever said crime doesn't pay is. Never heard of the State Department. All right, guys, that's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to support my work. And for those of you who came out to the No to NATO event in London in opposite Downing Street, that was really amazing. I had so much fun meeting you guys and speaking with you, and you know who you are. You know who you are. It was great. It was great speaking with you. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, David Hart, for the donation. David Hart said, "If you ever feel useless, just remember it took 20 years, trillions of dollars, and 4 United States presidents to replace the Taliban with the Taliban." Thank you for that, David. And thank you, Nicolaus, for the super chat. Ron, I'll get back to you on that next time with the video. Claude says, "Hi from Quebec City, Canada. Merci beaucoup pour votre émission." De rien, de rien. And shout out to Quebec. And thank you, Crazy Puppet. Thank you, TY. Thank you to everybody who's supporting the work on Patreon. Hopefully we can get some members to join and support independent journalism and media. And actually we just did. We've got Justin, who joined on Patreon. We've got Maya, who just joined, and Cortan and Deborah and Sammy. Thank you guys very much. I'll play an outgoing crab dance for you. So I appreciate you guys supporting my work very much. And let me check on PayPal quickly if we've got any donations there, so I can perhaps read them to you if you have any comments or questions or otherwise. And just a second. There we go. It's finally loaded. We've got a donation here from Hamad. Thank you very much. And it's refreshing. The other one from Jake. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate that. Jake says, "Keep up the great work, Richard. Really enjoy your show." Thank you. I'm humbled, and to all of you who've joined on Patreon, let's leave with the crab dance, and I'll see you guys next time. Remember, hit the bell icon so you guys make sure you get notifications. And if you want an email notification instead of through the app, it's on Substack. So give me a second. I'll pull this up. Maybe you guys can see this. Just a simple form. Just type your email and hit subscribe. And then every time I go live, you will get an email notification. So that way we can stay in touch and make sure you guys don't miss a live stream. So yeah, thanks guys very much. Take care, ma salame. Bye-bye.
A is for
all men and women created by go. You know the thing.
B is for
I'm beginning to see why your wife left you.
C is for
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
D is for
Don't worry, I'm so serious. Children, I love to hear them.
E is for
Excuse to walk by the dealer and say, no, I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom.
F is for
Time friend, and she's a friend. She's been my friend in and out of public life.
G is for
Go to Joe 30330.
H is for
Hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
I is for
I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate.
J is for
Just look at the record.
I have President Biden, Vice President Biden.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else.
K is for
Kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
L is for
The lion, dog, face, pony soldier.
M is for
Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone. Make sure the kids hear words.
N is for
NATO.
O is for
The only African-American woman that's ever been elected to the United States Senate.
P is for
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
R is for
Rest her soul, and although she's your mom's still alive.
S is for
Send a text to the word united.
T is for
Truth over facts.
U is for
Union workers, the UAW took incredible cuts in their future.
V is for
I'll vote for somebody else.
All right, thanks so much. W is for
Wait, you're getting nervous, man. Just calm down. It's okay.
X is for
Xi Jinping.
Y is for
And you ain't black.
Z is for
She's sleeping?
Women in our country has been classified as essential. So this is an issue.
By the way, this is my little sister Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh no, this is Val, you switched on me. This is my wife, this is my sister. They switched on me.
So you have another terrorist attack in Ukraine. This time it's the Kakhovka Dam. And the first thing the media do is blame the Russians. So let's see why the Russians would do it. They control the dam. They control the region. They need the dam to funnel water to Crimea, which is also under Russian control. They literally have zero motive. There is no motive. You know, the Washington Post in December published an article showing how Ukraine targeted this dam using American missiles, using the HIMARS system. They actually fired a missile at this dam to test if they could flood areas. Sound familiar? This is the same thing that we saw with the Nord Stream pipeline attacks, right? The first thing the press do is let's go and blame Russia. And now, almost a year later, the Washington Post finally admits that Ukraine, not Russia, Ukraine blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. This is something that I, myself, and others have been saying since the very beginning. Anyone with half a brain knew that it was not Russia. Russia would not blow up their own pipeline. But, you know, this was dismissed as a crackpot conspiracy theory that NATO would maybe do this, or Ukraine. No, that's Russian propaganda. And another example, the Nazi patches. This week, the New York Times also finally admit that Ukrainian soldiers en masse are wearing Nazi patches to the point that Western journalists have to ask them to hide the patches before they take photos of them. I mean, this is despicable on another level. And then later they claim that these are authentic photos. This is not journalism. This is curated propaganda. So are the New York Times and Washington Post doing propaganda now, right? They're doing Russian disinformation. These people are not doing journalism, all right? You guys are a year late. Only publishing the truth when nobody cares anymore. That's not journalism, okay? They are the ones doing disinformation. They are the ones doing propaganda. And these acts of state terrorism, blowing up pipelines and dams, European leaders say literally absolutely nothing. And all they do is give more money and more weapons to an army where men are wearing Nazi patches and blowing up our infrastructure. So what's the conclusion? Always ask yourself, who stands to gain? Whether we're talking about the Crimea Bridge, Nord Stream pipelines, or the Kakhovka Dam like today, always ask yourself who stands to benefit, and you'll find the answer, you'll find the truth. So everyone's talking about how Donald Trump has been indicted under the Espionage Act. But what a lot of people don't understand is that the Espionage Act is a law that has always been used in the United States as a political tool to silence opponents. It was crafted in 1917, so during World War I, and one of its most famous victims was Eugene Debs. He was given 10 years in prison and stripped of his citizenship because he gave an anti-war speech. Ellsberg, Manning, Kiriakos, Snowden, they were all charged under the Espionage Act as well, and none afforded a public interest defense. Yet another reason why the Espionage Act is a political tool to silence whistleblowers, quite literally, even in court. Even worse, it's also being used to threaten Julian Assange, a publisher, with almost 200 years in prison. So many people are upset about Trump putting classified documents in the bathroom. I wonder if they care just as much about freedom of speech and press freedoms. Trump definitely put America's national security at risk, not for bringing home documents, but assassinating Soleimani, the equivalent of Iran's defense minister. How come Trump's critics never attack him for actual crimes, like putting illegal sanctions on millions of people or stealing oil from Syria?
We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil.
If you love Ukraine, if you care about Ukraine, depleted uranium is the last thing in the world that you would tell them to use. If you look at what the United States have done, everywhere they've used depleted uranium, it's like dropping a nuclear bomb, and actually worse in other ways. Just to give you an example, in Fallujah in Iraq, guess what? 10, 20 years later, there are people in Fallujah who are being born with cancer. And it's so bad that you have higher rates of birth defects and congenital heart disease. in Fallujah than you do in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. In Nagasaki and Hiroshima, you knew that there was a nuclear explosion and you had to get the hell away from there if you could. The thing is, the people in Iraq didn't know what the Americans had put in the tank shells. You know, they dropped so much white phosphorus, they used so much depleted uranium. The people living there have no clue about this. You know, the war is bad enough without knowing that, you know, if you live there and you stay there, you're going to get cancer and your kids are going to be born with these massive nightmarish birth defects. And now they want to bring this literally cancerous thing, depleted uranium, and use it in Ukraine. If you love Ukraine, if you care about Ukraine, depleted uranium is the last thing in the world that you would tell them to use, because guess who's going to suffer from that? The people in Ukraine, right? Like, if their idea is to liberate Ukraine, right? Okay, let's say that they do. Tomorrow morning, Zelensky's gonna emerge victorious over the Donbass and Crimea, and he's gonna go have a nice parade, right? Guess what? All the people returning to their homes, or all the people living there, you're gonna give those people in Ukraine cancer because you use depleted uranium, because this stuff goes in the earth. It seeps into the earth, into the soil, into the water. It's actually worse than a nuke, truly, because people don't even know that it's there. They have no clue that they're living next to things that are going to give them cancer and destroy their DNA and give their children massive birth defects. They don't even know that it's there. It's like a silent killer. They don't care about you, man. They don't care about you. This is bad for the environment, obviously. That doesn't even need stating. And it's bad for human beings, and it's bad for wildlife, for everyone. But it's good for what? It's good if you manufacture it. It's very good.
This is explosive. This is mind-blowing. How do we know that it's the Ukrainians who haven't held up their end of the deal, but the Russians have? The deal was that the Russians will pull out of Kiev. At the time, the media that we have here in the West, they were saying, oh, the Russians have failed. Their army sucks. That's actually not at all what happened. The Russians pulled back on purpose and left the capital. They left Kiev because of this peace agreement. Boris Johnson was the prime minister at the time, and he just randomly happens to go and visit Zelensky. And he tells Zelensky, drop out of the peace negotiations, drop out. Zelensky did what Boris Johnson told him to do. Angela Merkel, who is the German chancellor, she says that in the end, the Minsk agreement, it was just a ruse in order to buy time for NATO to arm Ukraine. This means that, once again, you cannot take Western leaders and diplomats seriously. The Russians are done talking. This is the conclusion that I draw from this, because they have had it up to here with Ukraine and their backers and guarantors, you know, just playing games with them. So just remember the next time that the media tell you that the Russians walked away from peace talks, that this is a lie. And when they tell you the next time that Russia wanted this war, that this is a lie. Just remember these things.
Some in Iran wanted Iran to go to war with the Taliban. And actually, they were liberals. They were the pro-Western liberals who were saying that we should, you know, go to the defense of the Tajiks, who are Persian speakers, the Hazaras, who are predominantly Shia, and the Uzbeks and others. They together are more than 50%. Taliban is basically Pashtun. They are 40%, roughly 40% of the country. It's sort of ironic because the people who are calling for Iran to wage war against the Taliban, they were totally against the Russians in Ukraine. Their logic is not dissimilar to the logic of the Russians. These people were saying we should go to the support of the Persian speakers. Why not the Russians support Russian speakers? But yeah, that hypocrisy is aside. The Iranian government said, look, we have to keep Afghanistan peaceful, and it's had enough war.
South Africa, China, Brazil, all these countries that are BRICS countries. So you know, they are partners with Russia. They're not condoning Russia. They're actually saying, hey, everybody calm down and let's resolve this. And all you see is media attacking them. They attacked South Africa for proposing diplomacy. They attack Lula for trying to sit down Zelensky. Zelensky makes him wait and then doesn't even show up to the meeting. I mean, how insulting in any context, right? Never mind a goddamn president of the largest country in Latin America. So they try to like attack the countries closest to Russia for actually suggesting peace. Maybe South Africa should give some F-16s instead of being a Putin puppet, right? Maybe China should send some F-16s instead of being a Kremlin asset.